Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Tomorrow, David Cameron will write to the President of the European Council, the former Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, to spell out how he wants the EU and British membership of it reformed. We've got a pretty good idea of a lot of what's on the shopping list, but this will be the official version. To prepare, the PM was speaking at the CBI conference today, saying he was deadly serious about reform in a speech that was briefly heckled by anti-EU protesters. We'll ask the big questions. What will Europe yield? And is it enough? Shortly. First, though, here's our diplomatic correspondent, Mark Urban.
Come on. Come on, guys. If you sit down now, you can ask me a question rather than making fools of yourself by just standing up and protesting.
Even as David Cameron tried to make his case this morning, evidence that those who want out will only get more vocal.
Even I can remember that script without any notes.
But this audience was on side, at least as far as wanting to hear the PM's shopping list.
The things I want fixed, whether it's making a more competitive Europe, whether it's making sure we're out of an ever closer union, whether it's making sure there's proper fairness between those in the Eurozone and those out of the Eurozone, as John Cridland said a moment ago, or whether it's reducing the pressures that we face through immigration. These are big and important changes, and I think it's vital that we achieve them.
The EU concept of ever closer union is part of its founding Rome Treaty language, long cherished by federalists and offensive to sceptics. Number 10 want the phrase dropped. Other countries will try to limit such linguistic backsliding to Britain alone.
Well, if you look at what's happened electorally in places like Greece and Portugal, the political elites may well be trying to take the European Union in one direction, but the people on the ground, the people going to the ballot boxes, are saying something very, very different. The Portuguese people made it very clear at the recent elections they do not want to see ever closer political union, and that's something very, very much not on the table for the British people.
The election of a more Eurosceptic government in Poland is just one sign that Downing Street optimists see that the UK may find supporters for its ideas, both that non-Eurozone countries shouldn't be put at a competitive disadvantage or outvoted. Accommodations will be urged by those who really don't want Brexit.
Ireland regards the prospect of the United Kingdom leaving the European Union as a major strategic risk. In truth, the full risks are unknown, as much would depend upon the process and the detail of what a Brexit process would actually look like. However, it's an outcome that the Irish government does not wish to see materialise in the first place.
That kind of support will also help with Mr. Cameron's suggestion that the single market should be extended to some areas, like energy, where it still operates very imperfectly. But while the CBI might like that, is it really a winner on the doorstep?
The things that resonate on the doorstep and the things that resonate in the boardroom might be different, and I think the Prime Minister is absolutely right to look at a whole range of issues that will make a real difference to the British people and the British economy.
So what about that key doorstep issue, migration? The ongoing crisis keeps it in the public eye. But internal EU migration poses Mr. Cameron with his toughest challenge. He talked before about stopping benefits, but that won't be easy.
In all the other areas he can get something, this is going to be really hard. The thing he probably can't get is his requirement that EU migrants shouldn't be able to claim in-work benefits like tax credits until they've lived in the UK for 4 years. That would be incompatible with the treaty's provisions on non-discrimination against nationals from another country. And it's very hard to see how he could get that.
In the months ahead,
it will be important for the Prime Minister and his allies to maintain a sense of jeopardy, that they are really trying to get the best deal and that it may not work out. But those close to him insist that the jeopardy is very real and that on some of these key issues he may have to say that he hasn't got exactly what he set out to achieve.
Long-term economic security and...
Today's skirmish was hardly the first, and it certainly won't be the last. And at some time in the coming months, David Cameron will have to pick his moment to say whether the deal he's got is really worth voting for.
Mark Urban. Well, to discuss what is another crunch week for Britain's upcoming referendum on the EU, we're joined from Poland by Radek Sikorski, Poland's former foreign minister, who's just been appointed as a senior fellow at Harvard University, and from Edinburgh, UKIP's deputy chairman, Suzanne Evans. Radek Sikorski, if I could just start with you, do you think it is possible for David Cameron to win the sorts of things we suspect he's asking for?
Well, first of all, I'd rather be talking about British leadership in Europe, and it's there for the taking, for example, in the area of defence or foreign policy, where Europe needs it and it would give Britain a great deal of influence. But yes, this is very cleverly crafted because on the issues that have been mentioned, David Cameron will find allies in Europe. Energy union in particular in Poland, but also completing the single market, a British idea, in the area of digital trade, of services. Here he is entitled to speak for millions of Europeans and to make the EU itself a better organism. And I expect this to chime well with the kinds of governments that he needs to support his agenda.
Now, I think, aren't you over speaking here?
Union,
Sorry to interrupt, but aren't you, you're going too far here. You're meant to say, oh, it's going to be very difficult. There's going to be an enormous fight over these. Because his main objective, isn't it, is to look as though he's having a big fight with you.
Well, there will be problems with the benefits business. Remember, we in Poland do not encourage our citizens to travel for work to Britain. We would rather see our Poles coming back to Poland. But any Polish government will not agree to anything that smacks of discrimination or picking of particular nationalities. And also remember that countries that are outside of the EU but are inside the European Economic Area, Norway, for example, also has had to open its labour market, and there are 100,000 or so Poles working in Norway. So to avoid that, Britain would have to leave not just the EU, but also the European economic area. And then you're on a very long journey into the unknown.
OK, let me just ask, let me put that point, sorry, let me just put that point to Suzanne Evans. No, I will have to just put that point to Suzanne Evans from UKIP. I mean, firstly, Suzanne Evans, do you agree that David Cameron can win most of what he's going to ask them for? I know that's not enough for you, but can he win that?
I don't think he can, actually. I think what David Cameron is doing is making a jolly good show. He's trying to show that he is committed to reform, that he can win reform. But the fact is, in order to get what most people want in Britain, which is sovereignty back to the Westminster Parliament, to get control back of our democracy, to get control back of our economy, to get control back of our borders, that involves treaty change. And David Cameron clearly isn't even asking for that. What he's asking for, his shopping list, as far as we know what's on it, is a very simple set of requests. He's actually, despite the economic crisis in the Eurozone, despite the immigration crisis, when actually and arguably he could be making quite significant demands, he's actually set his sights very, very low. He should be setting his sights at a much higher target, but he isn't. He's setting his sights on a low target, and not only that, he seems to be expecting to miss it.
And the target on benefits and trying to restrict the tax subsidy or tax credit subsidies to migration through the benefit system, that for you is just not big enough. He needs control of the border in full.
This isn't a referendum about the benefit system. It is a referendum about our membership of the European Union. And of course, UKIP and both the out campaigns that we have, I think, are making a very strong case that we can indeed not just survive outside the European Union, but we can thrive outside it as well. And I know we will go on making that case until referendum day.
Okay,
but yes,
let me just put then, let me ask Radek Sikorski whether if Britain was to leave, vote to leave, we'd obviously have to negotiate with you over the terms of our access to the European Union markets and the terms. How easy would it be, in your view, for Britain to negotiate, for example, a trade deal with the EU and trade deals with partners with whom the EU has trade deals?
Well, let me just also pick a point on what Suzanne has said. You do have control over your borders. You're not part of the Schengen area. In fact, I was taking the Eurostar from Paris to London, and you had British border control in Paris.
Well, of course, but we still have to have the free movement of
controls
people.
in Calais.
Well, look, let's not get bogged down.
Right.
We do have a little bit of control, but we clearly don't have full control. Look, just how easy will it be for us to negotiate, Mr. Sikorski, how will it be easy for us to negotiate trade deals and the like if we leave?
Well, this would be the mother of all divorce cases. Divorces like this are always messy and very expensive. And if you were to leave, you would need to conclude new trade agreements with over 100 countries, and I suspect you wouldn't get as good a deal on your own as we get as the EU when the Commission negotiates on our behalf, representing us, the largest economy on earth. Also remember that for the continent, trade with the UK is about 10% of our trade, whereas for you, the UK, your trade with the continent is 50%. Of your trade. No prizes are given for who would have the advantage in such a negotiation.
Well, let me put that to Suzanne Evans. Yeah, you say we'd have to negotiate treaty change for you to be satisfied if we want to stay in. We're going to have to negotiate treaty change if we leave, aren't we?
We're going to have to negotiate a free trade deal. And what people always forget in this argument is they talk about the EU as being the only negotiating factor here. But of course, at the moment, we have a seat on the World Trade Organization that we are not allowed to sit on. Once we leave the European Union, we will take back our seat on the World Trade Organization, and then we have that very powerful body behind us in order to secure a free trade deal. But also to pick up on what Mr. Zagorski said, you know, the European Union needs us in terms of trade far more than we actually need them.
For the continent, trade with the UK is about 10% of our trade, whereas for you, the UK, your trade with the continent is 50%. Of your trade. No prizes are given for who would have the advantage in such a negotiation.
Well, let me put that.
We have a 50 billion, I think, trade deficit with the European Union, which means that we actually buy an awful lot more from them. And they could not do without our trade. That's the simple matter of fact. And if you talk to somebody, I remember a few years ago, Sir Digby Jones, the former president of the CBI, spoke at UKIP party conference, and he said such is the European Union's need of Britain that he reckoned we would be negotiating a free trade deal with the EU clearly, upon Brexit very, very quickly indeed, within a matter of hours.
In a matter of hours. Clearly we're going to have to drill down because there's a long way between the two of you on that. We'd better drill down to that in more detail later. Thanks both very much.
Pleasure.
I've been getting